All right, everyone. Well, welcome to another Saturday morning Zoom coffee chat with Elizabeth Foss and I. We are so glad you're here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Weinert. I am a mom down here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have 5 kids, including my sidekick co-host here. This is Beckett. He comes with me to all my Zoom calls. And my husband is Peter. And my co-host is Elizabeth Foss up in Virginia. Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi there, I am Elizabeth Foss. We are in Northern Virginia currently. We are spending our quarantine trying to move, sell a house, move to Connecticut, where we will be 15 minutes from Kristin Foss, who's also on this call. She's married to my oldest. Michael's the oldest of 9, so I have 9 kids, who some of them aren't kids because they have kids. Right now we have our college kids are home, and so we've got 6, 8, 6, 7, I don't know, a bunch of kids under roof, and eating a lot all the time at our table. So.
Well, this is a good topic for today then. And then Kristin, you're up in Connecticut and you're a mom. Tell us about a little bit about your family. You're also the designer for many of the Take Up and Read books, and you do so many things. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Kristin Foss. I'm Elizabeth's daughter-in-law. A lot of people think that I'm her daughter. So if I say anything about like food I ate growing up with my mom, it's not her, it's a different mom. But people get confused, especially when they see all of us, because there's like some brand or something. And then you throw my kids in the mix and it's like no one knows what's what. So
we all look alike.
So yeah, we all kind of look alike. Just kind of weird. So yeah, we live in Connecticut. We've lived here for, this is the 3rd year. And then we lived in Los Angeles for like a year and a half. And then before that, we actually lived 20 minutes from Elizabeth. So we're really excited to have them come back. Back then I only had one baby, and that was tough enough. That first one's the hardest. And now we've got 5. My oldest is going to be 6 next weekend. So wow. That's my claim to fame.
That's
it.
Awesome. And then we're so honored to have as our special guest, Emily Chapman. Many of you know Emily for her prolific work as a writer. She works with Endow. So many Bible studies, I would sit here all hour to name them all. She also just released a book she co-authored with Scott Hahn. She also wrote this amazing book that I love so much called The Catholic Table, Finding Joy Where Food and Faith Meet. She's a blogger. She writes the best posts on all of Instagram, and we're so happy to have you here, Emily. But tell us the important stuff. Tell us a little about your family and life up there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's really boring right now. So those of you who know me know I love to host. I love to have people over. Like, we bought this big house in Pittsburgh and restored it because I just like people in the house. I don't even care if they're talking to me. I just like a house that's filled with people. So this is kind of my worst nightmare. We are in the process of a second adoption, and I'm like, okay, I need another human being in the house. So can we please move this adoption along, just so there's another person here? But yeah, I love to cook. I love to host. Writing, and my toddler son, who my husband has whisked off somewhere, keep me busy. And yeah, so it's good to see faces. I miss people's faces. So
I know. Well, that's one of the reasons Elizabeth and I started doing these Zoom calls and doing it here on Zoom, because we wanted everyone to be able to see each other's faces. We needed that now. We wanted to be able to interact. And all of you who are joining the call, hop on over to the chat and just introduce yourselves real quick so we can say hi to you. I know that on many of these calls we've had ladies joining us from all over the world, not just the United States. So hop on over there and just say hey and introduce yourself real quick. We would love to hear from you and be able to say hey to you there too. So let's just jump right into this topic of food. And maybe to start us off, Elizabeth, you can set the stage for this topic, because when we first came up with the idea to do these Zoom calls, I think that very same day you texted me and said, we've got to do a Zoom on food. We have got to talk about food. And so maybe just like set the stage for us and put into words how we're all feeling about this topic right now.
So I think, I don't know how we're all feeling right now. For me, at the very beginning of this pandemic lockdown thing. I mean, when we first started hearing inklings of it, I have a kind of a grocery rhythm with my daughter, Katie, who's 17. And Katie and I started like double shopping or time and a half shopping and starting to shop and store things and stock things. And Kristin and I would talk a little bit back and forth about, well, what if and what should we do? And we both love to cook. And Kristin's husband, Michael, also really is a good cook. And so cooking is a creative expression. Anyway, like it's something I like to do. And at the very beginning, like the day after the stay-at-home order came, my mom called, and again, that I think that love of food and I mean, my mom doesn't so much like to cook as food is an expression of love. Like it is a love language for her. So the first thing she asks is, do you have enough to eat? And I'm like, pretty much I have enough to eat. This is not going to be problematic. And I did a little FaceTime video through my house and showed her where we had stocked things and what we were planning. And I was kind of all in. This is going to be sort of fun, because we were going to cook and eat. And one huge blessing for me has been like, we are back to having dinner every night at the table at the same time, which is a really hard thing to pull off when you have a lot of kids, and a lot of them are teenagers and young adults, and they have jobs and they have activities, and that whole family table thing happening every night at the same time just doesn't happen. So all those things were starting to be like incidental blessings. But Kristin and I, at the same time, Stephanie and I were talking about, how a lot of what our vision for these Zoom calls were homemaking, but like homemaking beyond. Like all of a sudden people were home and homeschooling, and they'd never done that before. All of a sudden, you have all these people in your house. When we did the teenage one, those teenagers aren't used to being home the way they're home. So everything is intensified, and cooking and eating and menu planning and kind of heroic shopping in a time when it's not a simple thing to do. All those things seem like such a great topic to me. But, my thought wasn't really my thought. It was Kristin's thought, because we had just been talking, and she was reading, some, I don't know, New York Times, Epicurious, like various like gourmet kind of, here's how to cook in a pandemic. And we were laughing at how ridiculous it was. And so we were like, well, maybe there's a better way to do this. So that's kind of the genesis here.
Well, I loved, Kristin, you wrote an Instagram post early on in self-quarantine about kind of a new intentionality with food, where all of a sudden what was in your fridge, what was in your pantry mattered a little bit more, and how you were going to put those things together, how you were going to use without wasting. All of a sudden it was a focus in a new way. So maybe just talk about that for a little bit.
So the conversation was that, but really what happened was I called her and I was like, oh my gosh, what are you feeding your people? Because then I can scale that down, because I don't think I have enough food. There was a moment of panic when, for us, it was never toilet paper. We have 5 kids, but there's only so many people who are actually using toilet paper. Like, that's just reality over here. Like, and we never had issues with toilet paper, but the fact that I couldn't, early on, we had a couple kids who were kind of sneezy and coughy, because here it's still winter, and the guidelines were don't go out if you have any symptoms. And I was like, okay, so we need to figure out Instacart. And we've done that with Costco before, but there was no time slots. And I had this moment of panic of like, we can't go to the grocery store. What do we have to eat? Normally, especially if you have little kids or even a larger family, like you probably bulk and you don't even, like, that's just life. Like you just have, you don't go to the grocery store every day. Why would you? You don't have time to do that. And we were in a situation where we were like, okay, when I heard about the toilet paper, I didn't go out. I didn't do this. Now I need to go to the grocery store, and what's going on? So Elizabeth was like, okay, well, okay, this is what I have in my pantry. And then I kind of looked at my pantry, scaled it back, and was like, okay, so maybe I'm not as bad as I, thought it was. And then we talked about how, produce is produce. You can't really stock up on produce. There's really, you've got to do that kind of on a weekly rhythm because, they don't keep, or you need to make something, freeze it in a way that it will keep. And it was funny because, yeah, she had been stocking up for so long, or not so long, but, like a month before. And we were talking about how that actually is it's helpful. And in these times, it's helpful to know, how to cook dry beans and how to, go in the pantry. It also is helpful to have a pantry that's already a little prepped. Maybe you have more than salt and pepper. Maybe you have other seasoned mix or other, oils. And my thing was, I think I was having my moment that everyone's having, like in cycles probably, is where you're like the stupid people. Like, who are these people who are going to the grocery store and taking my kids' food or taking my Instacart? Like if there weren't so many people who were panicking, and then you realize, okay, like we're all in this together. We're all doing this. So let's just dial it back. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get creative in the grocery, in my refrigerator. And we did that for like another week, and we were able to, my kids have no idea, like they don't know what's going on. And it's just normal dinners. Sometimes I've got one picky eater, and she's been like, that's the one that is tricky, but everyone else, they didn't know because we just got really creative with it.
Now, Emily, you are an amazing cook and you're a cookbook author and you love to host, but I bet this time for you, even who has a lot of creativity in the kitchen, I bet it's not easy for you too, even though you do have that creativity. What are you hearing from your followers and the people who have your cookbook, and what's your pulse on this with food?
I go back and forth between enjoying it being like an Iron Chef competition and then panicking, like, oh, the meat's gonna run out, I've got to go buy the meat. But we've settled into a good rhythm here. I mean, there's only 3 of us, and so, which is actually somewhat of a challenge, because when you're a smaller family, more food tends to go to waste, because after 4 or 5 days of eating the same recipe that's actually made for 10 people, oh, do you really want that again? Can you freeze it? There's only so much. And because of the adoption, we're stocking up on breast milk. So I could live on breast milk for maybe a year right now. We've got a deep freezer filled with breast milk. The second freezer in the basement is filled with breast milk. So I don't have a lot of freezer room right now because I would rather have the breast milk. So then it's trying to balance out, okay, well, we can't have frozen vegetables on hand. So how do I, so what I've been doing, we Instacarted before this. So I write full time. I care for my son full time. I'm busy. So I'm still busy in the middle of all this. So the Instacart rhythm was good, except now I know I need to place orders a week in advance. And when I place them, I'm placing them for 2 weeks, because we can't freeze a lot. And a lot of families who might not have extra freezers, you can't freeze a lot. I'm buying produce, 2 types of produce. So the produce that, we can eat in a week. So broccoli, Brussels sprouts, tomatoes, mushrooms. And then I have second week produce, cauliflower, cabbage, sweet potatoes, onions, things that will last longer. And so that way we're not having to buy a ton of frozen vegetables, which there's not a lot of right now. So if you want frozen vegetables that are all days, you're going to be left with like the really crappy stir fry mix, and that's it. So that's been a good balance for us. Most of our freezer space that's not going to breast milk is going to meat at this point, because I'm just a little concerned about meat shortages. So like Elizabeth, I was sort of on top of this from the beginning, and I never have been. I shop 3 or 4 times a week. I like to have fresh stuff in the house. I've never kept a big pantry. I'm kind of a minimalist with everything. And so it's been an adjustment to me to be like, no, I need to have food on hand. I need to make sure my family's fed. But I don't know. I called myself Ma Ingalls last night. I'm having fun. Like, my neighbor brought me 25-pound bag of flowers. So I think she's on this call right now. She was awesome. She scored that for me. And I was like, yes, it was because flowers been in short supply around here. So it's just, I don't know, the choleric in me likes the challenge, and then the melancholic in me gets alternately really depressed. So just depends on which hour of the day you get me is how I'm dealing with it all.
But I do think that, you have to kind of roll with it. Like if you happen to have that flour, then you can go with the flour thing, you know. And if what we've done, we're shopping for 8, a family of 8 or 10, depending. We have one that keeps coming in and out, but my husband's going to Costco. We think he already had COVID, so that's part of it. But and also he leaves to work, so he's going to Costco every other week, and we are stocking up. Now we do have a lot of freezer space. We actually have an extra refrigerator because we just got finished renovating our kitchen, and we hadn't gotten rid of the old refrigerator yet, so we happen to have like a lot of refrigerator space. But we're, you know, he'll have a detailed list to go to Costco, and then it's kind of like giving your list to Instacart, except that I actually have somebody in the store talking to me who's fairly friendly, you know, and he's like, yeah, there are absolutely no chicken breasts of any kind or thighs or anything boneless, you know, what are we going to do? And that's where the menu plan has to kind of adapt on the fly. So I do think it's a good idea to sit down and plan out those meals. What am I going to make with these things? And then, and make things that people are gonna, this isn't a good time to experiment, you know, pull the family favorites. What do you like? We have tacos every Tuesday. We have some kind of pasta every Wednesday. And I'm not playing with it a lot because there's nothing worse than wasting food right now. Like it really bothers me to like make a meal and have you go, yeah, we're not eating that because we're whatever. We're paleo today, or like, no, you're not. You're eating because we have to just eat. So I think it's like so many other things in life. You have to have a plan so that you can have a plan from which to deviate. You know, if you don't have the plan at all, then you're just kind of haphazard buying whatever happens to be there or whatever Instacart happens to give you. But if you have a plan, then you at least have this skeleton from which to work. And then, so I plan out my meals for like a 2-week stretch, and then I make a grocery list to go with it. And I front load with fresh things because you can use them up, you know, while they're still fresh. And then the second week is, you know, things that pull more from those cellar items, like Emily was saying, you know, the sweet potato kind of things, or you know, we have some freezer space, so they might use frozen vegetables instead of fresh vegetables. And then you just work that rhythm a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk just for a second before we get into details about making some tweaks or using specific foods for meal planning. But let's speak for a second to the woman who has never meal planned before, who does not like to cook. Maybe she works a full-time job and, you know, uses Instacart for the pre-made things, is used to takeout or the Chick-fil-A runs or whatever, and is now facing, okay, 3 meals a day that I'm cooking that I have to figure out a plan for before going to the grocery store and finding out whether or not the food on my list is going to be there. Can we speak to her, Emily, for a second, and just where do you start with the plan if you're not used to planning, or maybe even not used to cooking?
You know, I'm still working full-time. Chris is working full-time. We don't, normally during the week, we have a few hours of babysitting help. We don't have that right now. So I'm as stressed and busy as I am, you know, during the normal time. So during the week, one of the things we'll do, I like to have things like frozen tortellini on hand, frozen ravioli. Those are really simple things. If you're not used to cooking, you can pull those out of the freezer, throw them in. You toss them with some pesto or some olive oil and Parmesan, roast a vegetable on the side. You've got dinner. There's still like pre-made sauces that you can find a lot of times at Trader Joe's or Aldi's. Some of those, if you can get your hands on chicken breast or meat or anything like that, that makes it easy. Peasant food, you know, Italian peasant food, Indian peasant food, not a lot of ingredients usually. Usually they're really simple recipes because people didn't have a lot of food. So finding things like that can be thrown together really quickly. So for us, it's a rhythm of, I make a soup and then we can eat off that soup for lunch during the week. So I can't cook lunch every day for everybody. I would have a nervous breakdown in the middle of everything else. So having a soup that we're eating off of, having a few nights a week where I know we've got pasta or ravioli, or if you have to eat gluten-free gnocchi is a great another really great quick meal you can throw together. Things that, take 15, 20 minutes, maybe you're roasting vegetables for half an hour. Having like that be your sort of cornerstone where you're like, okay, I've got these things, and then maybe I'll try a new recipe one night. Maybe I'll try to mix some things together. So it's not every night you're having to come up with, a whole new fancy creative dinner from scratch. That's too much for anybody who's working. And people are just stressed right now. Like the emotional energy, it might be therapeutic to cook, or you might just want popcorn for dinner and you need to figure out how to find the balance between not feeding your family popcorn and making a huge fancy dinner. So that's why I think those really simple tortellini, pasta, easy soups that you can make at the beginning of the week. Right before COVID started, I was sharing, because with the adoption, we're not expecting to get a meal train at this point. So I'm trying to stock up on some easy soups that I can pull out and feed us when the baby comes, or if we have to travel to the baby and we're stuck in a residence inn in Florida or something like that, that I've got all of our food there. We're not shopping. So I was sharing some of the recipes from my cookbook that were super easy to do and you can make a lot of, and they freeze really well. So I've been sharing those with some people who aren't big cooks, and that's been helpful. But soups, simple pastas, frozen tortellinis, raviolis, that would be where I would start for a person who's not used to cooking for a family of 10 on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's good. Elizabeth or Kristin, do you have anything you want to add?
I think it's interesting. I'm just glancing at the comments. You don't have to sit up. It's okay. Babies are all right. You're my baby. She heard you say Elizabeth and sat up. She wasn't afraid. I was watching the comments a little bit, and there are people who are saying, well, it's a great time to experiment with recipes because we have so much more time. And I'm reading it just as Emily is saying, I have no time. And I think that this is a really good point about food and about everything else. Kristin has said this to me too. Like, I don't know where people are getting all this time. I have less time than I did before. And I think it just depends on your household, because depending on what's happening in your house, like I have far less time my work rhythm before this was always when the kids were at dance, or early in the morning, when nobody else is up, or I get a lot of work done, honestly, when my husband's traveling, which used to be all the time. And now I'm like, when am I going to work? Because they're home all the time. Our house is on the market. So my house actually has to be clean all the time. And we have a lot of people in it. So my experimenting in the kitchen time may not be what somebody else's is. But the flip side of that is, I have big kids who like to cook, and that will occupy them. Go experiment in the kitchen, where Kristin's not really going to tell her kids to go play Iron Chef with whatever's in the refrigerator, because they're all under 6. So I think this is going to look different in every household. But I do also think that even if you don't ordinarily cook and shop, give yourself a minute to think of food as a really good creative outlet. And don't be afraid to make some mistakes, to try something and to maybe push yourself a little bit into cooking. You have to cook because we're stuck here at home, and you can't carry out, and you can't count on convenience food the way you did before. So have some fun with it. Can we have any fun with this? Like, really, I think that we need to, because we all need a little bit of levity right now. So I'm trying to catch comments here as they go.
Can we talk
I think for people,
go ahead. Well,
I was just going to say, for people who don't cook at all and you're struggling with that, I think something that I've thought of with my kids, at least, because Lucy again is my picky eater, and she would eat lunch at school, and we'd let her do the school lunch because they make it kid friendly, and it's usually pretty healthy. But then suddenly she's here, and the other 3 will eat anything. They love to eat what I'm eating, and they usually just eat off of my plate. But what I thought a lot about recently is, like, how did my mom get me to eat as a kid? And I think if you think about things, you're looking for ideas, you might find that it's easier to cook what you grew up having a kid. Maybe you just know those recipes. So if you start there, I think that's really helpful. Mary Lieneberg, I don't know if you've been watching her. She's got this, like, I think on Fridays, she does this like throw together pot pie thing where she grew up as a kid and her mom would basically clean out the refrigerator, and they call it like mystery meatloaf or mystery pot pie. Yeah. And so many people are like, yes. And I think that's a brilliant idea. And it's not something that like she found in a recipe book or saw on a food blog. It's something that she grew up with. And for me, mine's not that fun, but like I'm feeding my kids box macaroni and cheese because my mom didn't always make us that, but I loved it. And my kids eat it and it's done in a couple minutes. So like 3 out of the 5 weekday lunches are boxed macaroni and cheese, and that's okay.
Can we talk about making frozen and canned stuff taste good? Because this is gonna sound stuck up probably, but my kids have never tasted canned vegetables until quarantine, because we have an amazing farmer's market very close to us, and everything's fresh. And for 9 months of the year, I can get super, super cheap fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's what we do. And I just didn't buy canned. I grew up with canned. I mean, I'm a kid of the 80s, so canned green beans, every other night for dinner. But my kids had never had it, and they were like, "What is this, Mom?" But we have to do some of that right now. For us, we are going out very infrequently to shop. I've got an immune-compromised baby, so we're just having to be super, super careful about leaving. So we do have a lot of canned stuff. How do I make it taste good? Spices, what do I do with it to make it taste good? Who has ideas? Come on, Emily, I need help.
I don't know if I'm good with the canned. Frozen I can help you with, because frozen, I've kind of perfected the art now of roast frozen vegetables. So I've discovered that the secret to frozen vegetables tasting good, you want to preheat the pan with olive oil on it. So you jack up the oven to 450, put in the pan with olive oil. Once it's really hot, you put your vegetables already tossed in separate olive oil and salt on it. And then about 20 minutes, and that high heat and the already hot olive oil gets the moisture out of it, so they're not soggy like a lot of times when you try to roast frozen vegetables. Yeah. So that is something that I recommend with broccoli, green beans. I haven't tried it with Brussels sprouts yet, but you probably could. Cauliflower, carrots, all that kind of stuff. Also soups. Soups is a great way to get, they're already going to be salty. You've got the salt from the can, so you can kind of add it to the soup, and that'll give you some extra flavor, and you won't really miss the fact that it's fresh because it's cooking in the soup and it's already been cooked. So that's probably, I'm trying to remember from the 80s, because what do we have? We have canned green beans. I think
jog your memory here. So we're talking about things that our husbands grew up with, or that we grew up with, and feeding our families like old-fashioned comfort foods. And my husband had never had a fresh vegetable before he was introduced to our family. The first time he came to dinner at my house, my mom asked him if he ever ate anything green, and he said, "Yes, I love lime jello." So this is what came home from Costco. People, this is a 4-pound can of tuna fish.
My husband loved that. He was thrilled.
I had this horrible hyperemesis experience with tuna fish 25 years ago. I'm still scarred. I have no idea what to do with 4 pounds of canned tuna. So go.
Chris is begging for tuna salad every day for lunch. I'm like, no, I'm hoarding the tuna for when we have to go get a baby.
I'll send you 4 pounds to take with you.
Yeah, send it. Chris would be thrilled with it. I'm like, I'm the tuna hoarder over here, because I know that's something we can put together in a hotel room. But salads. Okay, so you can make a delicious, if you want to eat lettuce. Some people don't want to eat lettuce right now. But tuna niçoise salad is great. You can boil eggs. You can put the tuna on it.
That's a good idea.
If you get any tomatoes. I mean, I'm fine with fresh vegetables if you just let them sit in the fridge for a couple of days. Pasta some cooked green beans, roasted potatoes on it, a little Dijon dressing, and you could just not eat the tuna and make everyone else eat it. Tuna in these spot salad is one of my favorite summer things, and you do it all with canned tuna.
Okay.
That's a great one. That's a great one. All right, so let's open the chat for questions. We'll keep talking, but let's open the chat. If you have a question, go ahead and post it there. We had a couple email questions come in before the hour. And if you want to ask a question audibly, just kind of let us know in the chat, and then I can call on you that way. Elizabeth, you had put on our little outline earlier about comfort food and the importance of comfort food right now. And I think this is a good topic. Emily, you talk about this in your book, The Catholic Table, but food does comfort us, and we're all stressed in different ways right now. And it's not just the adults, kids are stressed too. I mean, I've got all little kids, but you know what? All of my boys lost their entire baseball season. They lost, their homeschool co-op. They don't see their friends. They're not going to church. Everyone's hurting in their own way, and food does have a way of soothing us. So can we all talk just for a minute about the comfort aspect here and what we can do as women to kind of use food to comfort all the hurting hearts in our home right now?
Yeah, you had mentioned that to me before, and I was thinking about it. Good Friday was a really good check for me because I couldn't eat on Good Friday. And I realized how much just like going and grabbing a little bite of cheese or a cracker or a piece of chocolate had been giving me comfort throughout the week. I mean, it was sort of a good check. So it's good to take comfort in food. God made food to comfort us. Like we want to be able to feed our kids things that comfort them. It's always a balance though, because you also don't want to end up eating, an entire batch of chocolate chip cookies by yourself just because you're feeling down. So I think it's a good idea to be making things that comfort your kids, but at the same time, coming up with other fun activities you can do in a day that they can pick that will actually be comforting them. And the same for you. Like, yes, have that cookie, but then like, all right, what else is comforting for me? Would it be comforting for me to go read by myself for half an hour, or to go for a walk by myself for half an hour, or to call a friend, so that you've kind of got a whole bag of tricks you're pulling from when it comes to comfort, and not just food, because you want to take the comfort from food, but we all want to come out of this and, roughly the same size, because I can't afford a new wardrobe. So maybe somebody else can.
Emily, tacking on to that, I mentioned to Stephanie, and I wanted to find the list, but we're moving and putting my hands on different books at the right time is not happening the way I'd like it to. But in your book, The Catholic Table, like you had a list of intentional eating. Mm-hmm. The list of and I don't have it in front of me, and I'm probably putting you on the spot to like recall it, but I've thought about that list so much lately. I have 4 daughters who are determined not to gain the COVID-19, but also, are wanting to bake cookies and wanting to, do those things that are fun in the kitchen, which seem to always involve fat and sugar. And I was thinking about how when you're home all day and you have everything at your fingertips food-wise, that list is just gold. Can you kind of summarize that list for everybody?
Yeah, I think I have some of it. I probably, one of the things, so when I was, for those who aren't familiar with my story, I was an anorexic for a number of years. And then when I was trying to learn how to eat healthy again, I would struggle a little with binge eating. So I had to come up with a list of rules for myself that got me eating good foods and being comfortable with everything, but also not, overeating. So some of that is eating when I'm hungry and not when I'm when I'm bored. So if you're actually hungry, you eat. If you're not hungry, you don't eat. So not treating food as a source of just purely entertainment. Eating sitting down with a knife and a fork and a plate. When I was anorexic, I felt like if there were no plates around or forks, there was no evidence that I'd eaten. That was somehow a better thing, which sounds crazy, but anyhow, it was an issue. So being really intentional and sitting down and, okay, this is the amount of food I'm eating and I'm going to enjoy it. That was really helpful. Not having second helpings, not eating in between, setting days where I could have sweets and days where I couldn't have sweets. And it was all very individual to me, but it was learning that I needed to set boundaries, be intentional about what I was eating and really enjoy it. And so I could have 2 cookies and not feel guilty about it, because I also knew there would be cookies tomorrow. Now, if you have teenagers in the house, those cookies might not be there tomorrow. So that might,
Well, they might not
that
be
might
there in
be
the morning.
difficult. But really just an intentionality. I would pick days of the week where I fasted from sweets. So I knew that on Wednesdays and Fridays, I wasn't going to have sweets. I was going to offer that up. And fasting, when it's done not with an eye to like, how slim can I be or how much weight can I avoid eating, but, oh, I want to offer the sacrifice to the Lord for all of the people who are hungry right now, for the people who are out of work, for the people who are sick. And that's a great way to balance out the enjoying what you have in your house or what your kids are making, but also, you know, practicing temperance and recognizing everything is a gift and joining your hunger to other people. So it's all about balance. It's about not going to one extreme or the other.
Tagging that about balance, Jackie asked about food strictness as a mom. Her kids are wanting to eat a ton, seconds, thirds, fourth helpings. And we had a question come in. I believe Jennifer emailed a question before we went on today. She has 9 children, and she said, what do I do about this? Because when everyone's home and a little bit on the board side, everybody does want to eat more. So what do you do as the mom with a level of strictness?
Right. It's a lot of food.
Yeah.
And Kristin and I, you said food strictness, and we looked at each other and laughed. Because, I mean, even in regular times, food strictness is something you want to, I just feel like it's a hard thing to have a balance with, because I don't want to be like the food police. But also I want to encourage them to eat well. And there is some grand scheme to all of this. Like, there's a budget behind this, and there's a plan. And if I go to bed and I have 4 teenagers in my kitchen and they just help themselves to whatever, that can wreck the plan for the whole week. So I think especially right now, and if you've got 9 kids, I'm hoping that some of them are old enough to understand that communication is key. Like, we really did sit our kids down and say, I had one kid who was like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're hoarding. You are one of the people that is causing the problem. And I looked at him and said, you just are becoming aware of what it's like to shop for 10 people at the table. Like, I'm actually not hoarding. I'm making sure that there's enough for you for the next 2 weeks. And it looks like a lot because we're a lot of people, So we explained to them that there is a plan for this food, and that we want you to be creative, have fun. Like, they love to make their own breakfast, and they are quite elaborate sometimes, but you've got to ask, not because I want to be the food police, but because there is a plan for this food, and we need to all work together to preserve the plan while still enjoying food whenever. So I think that helps. And you sent me that question, and I know her concern was shopping, and I think that's something that's hard to address because regionally we just don't know. We've been finding that the warehouse stores, Costco, BJ's, are both better for the most part right now in terms of having enough. You don't always get exactly what you wanted, so you might not get chicken breasts, and he might be bringing home more whole chickens, or we'll have to play with that a little bit. But they seem to be better stock. We have 4 grocery stores within a couple of miles of our house, and none of them have been very reliable in the last 3 weeks. But he's done fairly well at Costco, and Trader Joe's was considerably better now than it was 3 weeks ago. So maybe we're starting to adjust to the new normal in terms of the food supply. But it's probably different too. Like, Kristin can speak to being the food police with little kids who demand the almonds out of the trail mix, and like but with my bigger kids, this is, I think, an opportunity to grow up a little bit and learn the realistic parts of what feeding a family looks like. So we've been talking.
Mary Smith wrote she's been writing no on things the kids will eat. I think that's so funny.
That's a great idea.
No.
No is a great.
Yeah.
And how fast can you learn the word no? I'm pretty sure your 3-year-olds could read it.
So
No,
somebody
oh, sorry, Kristin, go ahead.
somebody asked about breakfast, and I think this is relevant to this topic. What we do is, first of all, I try to do as much protein in the morning to get things going, because if you eat sugar, you eat carbs. Now, my kids love Eggos, so that's a problem. But for the adults, especially me and my husband, I try to get us coffee and something with protein, because he's working at home now. And I never was like, Elizabeth is so nice to my father-in-law. She'll like bring some breakfast in bed. And I remember being like, dang, that's so nice. And now I'm doing it to Michael, and it's not really for me, because it just levels out that blood sugar. And because he won't eat. Like, he just starts working like at 8, just starts going at it. And he's got a little office space here now, but like, if I don't feed him by like noon, even the kids are running around, like we all need to be on our best blood sugar. Just start it with science. Like, we just got to get the nutrition down. Then the emotional stuff, if it happens, it happens. But what I've been doing for breakfast is I'll make like a big frittata kind of thing. And so vegetables, if you have leftover vegetables from the night before, or some meat. One thing I think, if you're kind of considering the use of leftovers, is maybe that first round, like you cook a steak or more chicken or whatever, try not to over season it, so that later in the week you can re-season it, and you're not like, maybe you just do salt and pepper the first time, then we'll use it for leftovers, we'll add some spices, or we'll add some soy sauce, make it stir fry, whatever, that kind of thing. But yeah, breakfast, if you can get that protein, then you can really follow like what Emily's saying, where you have these intentional snacks. If you start with like pancakes, you're gonna crave sugar
and crash hard
by 10 o'clock. And my kids do that all the time, like around 10. So like, and then there's a few people who are asking about like snacking and stuff. Do as I say, not what I do here. But if you can figure out, okay, 10:30, we're going to do a family snack. Then 11, I'll start making, if you can get into a rhythm like that, little kids are definitely easier, because I can call them to the table and they're like, okay, it's time for a snack, give them a little thing. Then that helps too, to help with binging, because binging is a natural way of your body, the blood sugar crashes, and then all of a sudden your body's like, I get bad sometimes, like my hands will start shaking, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need to eat something, and it never ends well. And now is a time where if we can be intentional, especially in the morning, I think that can help you set up your day to follow all these, just eat better, to not have that 2 o'clock, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die feeling.
I think real quick, the breakfast in bed trick, that is a trick. I mean, it sounds so, we've talked about this before on one of the other Zooms. It sounds like such a, oh, she brings him breakfast in bed every morning. That's so romantic. And it's not. As Kristin has discovered, it's a way to keep him out of the chaos of the morning and feed him well, so that we start the day with that important protein. So my point, because she covered it all, is it's not limited to husbands. If you have a kid who really struggles with that in the morning, wakes up grumpy, needs to eat, has a tendency towards hangry, think about intentionally feeding that child a good protein breakfast first. And maybe that kid becomes a breakfast in bed kid. I don't know, but yeah, breakfast is key for sure.
Emily, please tell me you do not bring Chris breakfast in bed. I cannot be the only one on this call who does not do this.
No. I'm here like, wow, that's nice. No, Chris is actually really, I'm up every day at 4:30 writing. So I get up, get the coffee, and write for you know, I don't know, at least a couple hours before Chris and Toby wake up. We give Toby some Cheerios while Chris and I eat coffee. And Chris is in charge of breakfast for Toby. So that's how we did it during the school year. That's how it stays here. And Chris is not a cook by any stretch of the imagination. So we do frozen pancakes from Aldi's with almond butter on them. So he gets that protein, but he just has to put them in the, you know, in the whatever, the toaster oven, and that works really well for us. So breakfast is always our super, super simple meal, because I'm working until, you know, every day until 9. So that's my time to write, is from 4:30 in the morning until 9 a.m. And that's super, and everything here is low key till dinner. Like Toby gets cold cuts and liverwurst and brie or leftovers for lunch, you know, while Chris and I have soup. We keep it super simple because I don't have time to cook. Chris can't cook. And so I think it's just what works for your family. And so that was part for us when we were looking at quarantine. I wasn't going to start reinventing the wheel. And even though I jokingly call myself Ma Ingalls, I'm not. And, you know, I'm not going to do huge things that I don't normally do. We're all just doing what we can. And so what do you normally like to eat? What do you normally, how do you normally do lunches? For me, I've had to hide food from my husband. So I didn't know how much he snacked until suddenly he was home all day. And these breakfast bars that he and Toby both like as little snacks were disappearing in the course of a day. And I was like, honey, how much have you eaten of this? And he's like, well, I only had 4 today. I was like, those are your breakfast bars for the week. You can't have 4. So I now only put out the week's worth of food. The extra second week of food of snacks is hidden in a separate place. And that allows me to kind of keep meals on track. And because if there's a lot of it, he will eat it, thinking there's an abundance, and not thinking this is what has to last us for 2 weeks.
Well,
so,
it's different from a man being home who's not used to being home too. Like, you know, when you're at work my husband's usually work 12 hours a day, and he takes with him what he's going to eat for that day. And it's just different when the pantry's here. And there's a lot more stress for a lot of guys too. And, you know, snacking's a way to deal with that. So it can be
I didn't know how much more difference one person could make. Like one person around during the day has thrown off everything with the
lunch here. It's like has to be an adult lunch now. There's got to be like, we have like 2 breakfasts because my kids do eat like pancakes or Eggos. That's what he'll wake up first, that he'll give them the pancakes, and then I'll be like, okay, time for second breakfast because we've got to eat something. And then some of the kids will eat it too. But yeah, it's crazy to think the difference like one adult would make. You got
Yeah. My husband is scared of the microwave. So when he was a teenager, the microwave, like he put a non-microwavable dish in the microwave and it sparked. And so me trying to get him to microwave his own lunch is, he'll be like, well, can't you do that? I'm like, you're 52 years old. Can't you microwave your soup? But that extra little bit of stress it's not something I would have anticipated. It was easier to send it off with him to work and he would just eat that.
I have to say, Michael does know how to cook. Like that is a thing. We talk about like experimenting, and we do experiment in the kitchen. It's a competitive thing here. If you are cooking dinner, it's like you've got the honorary chair, because then the other person tries to distract the kids. Even if not, like it's such an honor to be able to cook dinner in my house, to like be given that side of the stove. But I have to say, and that's been a huge blessing to have him be able to help in that way. I mean, I always thought it was a blessing, like when I was like sick in pregnancy or something, because I would just check out at like 4 o'clock. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's been really great. So a lot of people usually ask like, well, how do you do dinner? And some of it's just family culture too, to just be like, okay, this is happening now. We're doing this now. And my kids pretty much know, like around 3 or 4 o'clock, you're not going to get anything but a movie out of me. Yeah, because we're cooking and it's going to be a thing. And if you want to eat tonight, you better get out of the way.
Yeah. And I also think that now is a great time for all of us. You know, we're all home in that 3-4 o'clock hour. Like you can start establishing, if you don't already have it, a sit down family dinner time that like just is so hard to capture any other time, like in real life when we're not quarantined. But now it can happen in almost every household, you know, where you can do it and talk to each other about how to make it happen and who's gonna support that and who's gonna make sure that the cooking is happening. Here, my husband's actually going to work. He leaves the house at 2 every day and he gets back at 5. It's a weird thing, but he works in sports television, and there's a guy who appears on television every day, and he does it because Mike drives to his house and helps with his in-home studio. So it's this really brief window, but he's gone from 2 to 5, and I love that 4:15 phone call. It goes the same every day. He's like, okay, I'm on my way. What are you doing? I'm cooking dinner. Oh, okay, what are we having for dinner? It's just like so nice all of a sudden to have this rhythm where every day at 4:15 he calls, every day at 4:15 I'm cooking dinner, and then we're all gonna sit down and eat. And I highly encourage you, if you're not already doing that, to try to do it, because there is something nice to having a rhythm in your day that, even though it sounds stressful at first, like, oh my gosh, 4 o'clock's the witching hour, now I'm cooking during it. The counterbalance of that is, yeah, we have this anchor of expecting to eat every day at a certain time, and everybody's more peaceful because of it.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just going to throw it out there that I'm very much team Disney Plus or PBS Kids for the making dinner situation, because otherwise
Absolutely.
I really need to go to confession pretty much by 6 p.m. every night if there's not some help in that in that department. So just throwing that out there.
Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is an
Yes.
integral part of our childcare plan for the quarantine. Because Daniel Tiger, we both have to work. We have to get stuff done. So even though we're here in the house, Toby goes back and forth like a hot potato, but Daniel Tiger is getting us through. So no shame, no guilt, no nothing. We love Daniel Tiger.
A few minutes ago, Katie Zubrod asked a good question. She asked about, Emily, I think good question for you. This being a season of feasting, we're in the Easter season, especially I think if you have older kids who are expecting a little bit of feasting right now, and like that's tradition, mom, and you know, where's the cookies, where's the pie kind of thing. But it's really hard to find feasting foods right now. I know for us, even before Easter, I sent my husband out looking for meat and looking for things. He came back, he's like, there is no lamb to be had. There's no ham. I mean, you just have to do with what you can do. But what are some just simple ideas for bringing kind of that feasting aspect to the table, even maybe with limited resources right now?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that can be fun is to make dinner a little more special. Like if your husband's still working 12-hour days and you have 2 toddlers, that might not work out. But if you could have a night where you sit down and there's candles or there's napkins or there's real plates, and kids respond to fancy stuff. Toby is not even 2 and he loves it when we do things a little bit fancier. He gets excited about it and feels like a big boy. So it doesn't always have to be food that's lending that idea of feasting. I think that I wanted to make strawberry shortcake for Easter lunch, but there was no flour to be found anywhere. So I got Bisquick, and you know what? Bisquick worked. It was, if you want to make bread and there's a special bread, but there's no yeast, beer bread is an awesome substitute, because the yeast in the beer acts as a leavening agent. So finding kind of creative ways. Google will tell you everything. I've got some food I needed to use up, and I was like, I wonder if anyone's ever made a tomato pesto with sunflower seeds. And I Googled that, and sure enough, someone has done it. So really thinking outside of the box, how you can get creative and, you know, fancy it up for kids. Put it on a fancy dish, serve it with candles, have music going, do something. It can feel crazy at times when there's a new baby or something like that. Not every season's going to work, but if you can, that adds something special to it.
Yeah, I love that. Elizabeth, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I actually I was in a major funk like Easter weekend, and just pretty much was just gonna ignore the whole thing. And my girls would have nothing to do with that. And Sarah, my littlest, who you just saw, was the chief cheerleader for feasting, and thoroughly loved setting the table with a pretty pink tablecloth, pulling out the china, doing, she's looked up ways to fold cloth napkins into pretty designs. We put candles on the table. She served us, like, looked up in the food anatomy book, where everything went with a formal, like, you would have thought the Queen of England had Easter dinner with us. She insisted on everybody dressing up. And at the end of the day, I was so glad she did it, because first of all, she was ridiculously giddy about it. I mean, just thrilled to pieces. And we all have this memory of this really special Easter dinner, candlelit Easter dinner that, she did. So we are coming up with ways to mark, make it a little bit special. There's a carrot cake in the works, and there's, we've been able to do little things that do say special. We, in our family, we always have ice cream sundaes on Sunday. We have Sundays on Sunday. So my husband's been careful about making sure that there's an ice cream supply, and it's a simple thing. Like, we can find ice cream. Like, last week there were some pretty weird flavors. It was definitely not the usual, but every Sunday is just this little feast and that's the only time we're supposed to have ice cream. Now, I noticed that he found ice cream earlier in the week, and there may not be any ice cream tomorrow, which means somebody's been eating ice cream at night. But that happens around here. So, but yeah, I think there are ways to do it, and it's worth doing.
Yeah. And I think a little adversity is not a terrible thing for most of us. Like, we've had a bunch of birthdays. Well, we've only actually had 2, but we've got another birthday this weekend. And, some of it is like, this is just what life is, and it's okay for kids to maybe not have the birthday cake that they told you they want. Maybe we won't do a unicorn birthday cake this year. Maybe we're going to do just something vanilla box cake. And that's fine. That's like, it's okay.
Also, we did a fun thing. I'm interrupting, Kristin, but when we go to Connecticut, we always go buy cupcakes from this cake gypsy store that has fabulous, beautiful cupcakes.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw that online, you could order to go, like, you could get the cupcakes and they came with bags of decorating icing and glitter and unicorn whatevers. And we ordered them and had Michael go pick them up for the kids. And the most fun we had, like, we're here, they're there with the cupcakes and the mess and everything else. But those videos of those kids decorating cupcakes, like, more joy here and more sense of celebration here than if we had the cupcakes here. Like, it was so fun. So, and it all kind of originated from this little talk my husband was having with the kids about how we need to be mindful of local businesses. And they were talking about businesses here that they'd be so sad if they weren't there when this is all over. And we're moving to Connecticut. And, Sarah was like, well, what if Gypsy Cupcakes isn't there when we get there? And then that became this rabbit trail of how to keep Gypsy Cupcakes in business. But it was a celebration. It was a fun thing to do. And there are ways to do that. It's just a little bit unusual.
Yeah. All right, we are running out of time, but Emily, I have one more question for you that came up in email a couple times before the show, and I see it a couple times in the comments here. And it's about hospitality, which you talked about at the beginning of the hour is so very much your heart. A lot of women are really grieving right now the inability to get together with people, not just for the big feast days that we have during this time, but just being able to open your door and let people in. Do you have any creative ideas or just words of encouragement for people, all the women who feel like you do, just kind of that angst over not having the same hospitality we normally do?
I know, it's kind of killing me. It really is going to depend on where you are. Obviously, Zoom is great. I've known people who've had Zoom wedding showers and baby showers over the past few weeks, and they've gotten dressed up, and everyone's had a drink, and some have sent gifts out in advance, and that's good. We're fortunate here right now in Pittsburgh that it's not like it's New York City, and it's not Philadelphia. Things in our side of the state are actually pretty chill, all things concerned. So what we've discovered is we can have car visits with people. One of my best friends, her kitchen window is up against an alley. And so we can drive and just visit with her. Like we're about 10 feet apart. We can have talks. That's been great. After the kids go to bed, we've had some friends over to sit in the backyard. One of my best friends is a single mom. She's come over and sat in the backyard and talked to me. We can't do it when the kids are around because the kids they don't speak social distancing. They want to kiss and hug and play. But that's been fine. And that's been going on all over our area. So no one's tried to shut that down. If you're in a really dense urban area where you can't do that. But just looking for any ways to have human connection. And it kills me not to have my friends in my house. I just want them to come in and drink wine. But talking to them in a car across an alley is better than not talking to them at all. So if you can find ways to have safe distance conversations, keeping kids in strollers or cars or in bed, I would encourage that.
We actually met a family. We live on the cul-de-sac, and this family came down. They have 5 kids, boy-girl twins like us, and they drove their van down. They were riding in the cul-de-sac. And this is just part of my personality too now as like a mom with kids and trying to meet other moms. I just went out there, stood in my driveway, and I said, "You've got 5 kids? I've got 5 kids." And then the kids came out. We didn't let them leave the driveway. And they know that. But I thought it was funny because I went inside and Michael was like, "What's going on out there?" And I said, they live in our neighborhood. We have friends now, and they're from San Francisco. Like, I think once this is all over, we can all be friends. They're gonna come over tomorrow and play in the cul-de-sac. Like, and it's bizarre, but like, it's still a connection, and you can still check that and be like, now I know another family in this neighborhood I wouldn't have met otherwise,
Yeah. All right. Well, we are out of time, so we're going to say goodbye today. First, I want to thank all of you ladies who have joined us on the call live. It's been so fun to see your faces. The chat box has been one of probably the best conversations going in the chat we've had of all our Zoom calls. I've loved seeing all of you contribute and participate. First, Emily, want to mention your book one more time, The Catholic Table. A lot of the conversation we've had today with Emily is in her book. So this is a great time to pick it up and read through it so that when we're all allowed to open our doors again and have our friends in, it's full of recipes, as well as just a beautiful theology of the table. And you will be so inspired by this book, The Catholic Table, Finding Joy Where Food and Faith Meet by Emily Chapman. Emily, what are the best ways for our audience and those who listen to the recording to connect with you? Is it your blog, Instagram? Where's the best place to send everybody?
The blog is so defunct. Instagram's probably the best. I mean, that's where I spend, like most mom, that's where I spend most of my time. So Instagram is good. You're always welcome to email me. My email's on Instagram. I'm better about getting back to Instagram messages than I am to Facebook messages or email. So that's always the easiest way. And yeah, you can find out all about, I do have the cookbook too. So if you're looking for new recipes, you can find out about the cookbook just in my Instagram bio. So
perfect. That was going to be my next question. Okay. And then Kristin, how can everybody find you? What's the best way to find you? Instagram.
Same thing. I'm not gonna post very often.
You have a beautiful Instagram account. It's so inspiring. Everybody go follow Kristin if you aren't already.
Yeah, I
Foss,
try not to take pictures of my kids crying or anything, but it happens occasionally. And I only post my house when it's clean. It's never clean. Like, this is about 2 feet of clean, and the rest of it, you can't see it, but it's not.
That's okay. We all need a little bit of that. We need the pretty. I think it's inspiring. And then
2 feet.
And then you can find Elizabeth Foss on her blog, elizabethfoss.com, and on Instagram at Elizabeth Foss. We will have a recording of today if you want to share this with a friend who could use some encouragement. It'll be on YouTube in a couple hours, both on Elizabeth's Instagram and my Instagram as well. So thank you again, Emily, for being with us, and thank you, Kristin. God bless you all. Do you want to leave with any thoughts, Elizabeth, or anything you wanted to say at the end?
I'm good. I have to go make lunch.
All right, we all have to go
So
make
I'm
lunch.
gonna go make lunch.
We all right now.
Sounds good. All right. God bless everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Take care, everybody. Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Thanks,
Bye.